The date is April 15th, 2014. DarkX leaves the Korean Geometry Dash community, his levels being deleted shortly thereafter, and he vanishes, to never be seen again, sparking a nearly 7-year hunt for element 111RG that ends in partial failure, with the full true level never being found, leaving Restoration Union and many others with more questions than answers. But what if this was different? What if, in a different timeline, DarkX just never quits? How would that shape the future of the community? And what kind of legacy would he leave behind by choosing to stay? First, we need to address why he would even choose to stay in the first place. There simply isn't a lot of incentive for him to do so. He's no longer a part of the Element series team. His name has become synonymous with a cheater who illegitimately verified his one and only claim to fame, and he is shunned by the entire Korean Geometry Dash community. There's just not a whole lot here that can compel him to keep making levels, let alone his Element Series 12. But let's just say he stays in the community out of pure spite and pettiness to get back at the people who now hated him, continuing to remain like a ghost who refused to leave, and thus, this is the point of divergence. Instead of leaving, he chooses to stay, and now our scenario can really begin to take shape. Throughout the remaining month of April, DarkX would keep 111RG upon the servers, as despite all the controversy and trouble it brought him, this level was still something to be proud of, and, at the same time, he feels like he needs to finish the rest of the Element series, from 112 to 118, even if he is no longer a part of the team. This would become his sole focus, and he would work on them in the background as April comes to a close. As the month of May dawns, he becomes close to finishing Element 112 CN, his next level in his Element series, even harder than RG, most likely being level 4 in difficulty, along with introducing maybe a new gimmick or two. And considering Element 111RG was created approximately within the span of 3 to 4 weeks, CN would probably follow a similar timeline, being released near the end of May, sometime after the 25th. Whenever he released this level, it would probably still whip the Korean GD community into a frenzy, the same as with 111RG. Many people flock to play 112CN, and they find out that they simply can't clear the level, no matter how hard they try, not even getting anywhere close to the 41% practice mode record for RG. However, at the same time, many players that previously called DarkX out do the same here, reprimanding him for his continued use of secret ways in his levels, as well as ignoring their urges to change for the better. DarkX likes the renewed attention he is getting, as well as his newfound reputation for controversy. At this point, he does not care. He fully intends on spiting the Korean community by releasing increasingly harder and harder element levels as a way of getting back at the same people who called him out for RG. In the background, however, he returns to making the next installment in his series, Element 113NH. During this time, Update 1.7 would release, introducing the Speed Portal, which DarkX would take note of. but would choose to not use it in 112CN, as it was already near completion by the time of the update. Instead, he would save it for the next installment, Element 113NH. Additionally, he would, as before, discuss 112CN on the GMDW Neighbor Cafe, showing his very in-depth knowledge about timings and game mechanics, as well as sometimes revealing details of specific sections, like how to pass a certain timing or gimmick, never revealing too much, but just enough to maintain interest in his level. By the beginnings of June 2014, interest in 112CN would fall, and the community would talk less and less about his level, prompting him to release the next level in his Element series, being Element 113NH, sometime in mid-July 2014. 113NH would be yet another step up from 112, being level 5 in difficulty, while, just like its predecessors, introduce more gimmicks and unique timings from DarkX. This time, however, instead of the big community uproar he was expecting to receive upon Element 113's NH to the servers, the opposite would happen. Much like with Road Boss's Ice Carbon Chaos, the Korean community simply did not care, and at this point were tired of his seemingly impossible levels. Furthermore, 112 and 113 would not be rated, giving even less of an incentive to play his levels. DarkX would then try and garner attention to 113 by promoting it on the cafe, but it wouldn't do much, and the community would just continue to go about their days, not giving any attention to his newest creation. Upon seeing this, DarkX would be faced with two options: either 1, retire from the game and give up on making his level, or 2, continue the series anyways. Both options are equally likely to happen. On one hand, leaving would be the logical choice. He had overstayed his welcome and become very unpopular and disliked in the Korean community, and the reception he received for his two latest creations only served to reinforce that point. 113 in particular would really drive down his motivation to play the game and continue creating. But, on the other hand, he was too far in now to quit. Quitting now would make everything he did up to this point, all the work and all the attention, completely worthless. It would feel like giving in to what the community wanted him to do: leave and never come back. Why should he give in to their demands? Why should he simply quit creating when he was already actively spiting them by continuing to release harder and harder element levels? And therefore, after much deliberation, DarkX would decide to stay and continue creating, but would probably take a small break for a month or two before coming back to finish Element 114FL, which he had started after the release of 113, but never really got too far into the process due to the aforementioned circumstances. Throughout the months of late August or early December 2014, DarkX would come back from his break and begin working on Element 114FL, and he would release it only a month after his return, during mid-October. This time, the reception would be mixed. While it would not garner nearly as much attention as Element 111RG or 112CN, It also would not be completely ignored like element 113NH. All in all, element 114 would turn out to be acceptable to DarkX, and it would be received with some liking it and glad of his return, but most would either dislike it or ignore it altogether. Furthermore, around this time, he would become less active in the community, just continuing to finish his Element series in the background, while occasionally keeping track of events in Geometry Dash. And around the end of October 2014, DarkX would begin to create the next level in his series, Element 115 MC. With the release of the next update, 1.9, during November 2014, DarkX would have a whole bunch of new features to work with, mainly the wave. He would slowly build 115MC, while at the same time experimenting with the new game mode. The progress would be slightly slower, leading to him only releasing 115 during mid-December, taking a month and a half, which would be several weeks longer than his previous Element levels. With this release, the reception around 115MC would soften just a bit. The community would be just starting to appreciate higher difficulty, but that would not mean they would suddenly start to like his levels. There would still be a fair bit of haters and people who disliked DarkX due to his controversial past and actions. Therefore, Element 115MC would probably end up like 114FL, still receiving some attention and recognition, but at the same time being quickly forgotten or outright ignored by the wider community. Between the months after 1.9 but before 2.0, DarkX would press on, continuing to create despite the little attention he was receiving now for his levels. After all, Element 116LV was the next on his list. As the year turned into 2015, he would continue to work on 116, of course making it harder than all the other previous installments, with 116 being level 8 in terms of difficulty. But his pace would slow down even farther, as he would become demotivated at the lack of attention he was getting. Was it really worth it to continue at this point when the work became less and less worth it? On top of this, he would begin to simply run out of ideas for his Element series. These two factors combined would push him to leave the game for now. However, the release of Cataclysm during the month of January 2015 would draw DarkX back into the game. The hype he saw surrounding it, the attention it was receiving, and the overall reception of the level by the community would remind him of RG. Thus, he would come back quietly during late January and set off to finish 116LV. With this renewed motivation, he would finish it with 2 months of work and publish it onto the server during mid to late April. With this, he was reaching the end. Element 117 and 118 were all that remained. DarkX would begin creating 117 UUS in the month of May. His building speed at this point in time was no longer what it used to be, where he could just pump out element levels every month or so. It's now a slow and long building process, and coupled with the fact that his momentum was slowing down, it would only add more time he would need to spend to finish 117. Now those who have been observant would notice, why is it 117 UUS instead of 117 TS? Well, you see, the 117th element would only become TS in June 2016, whereas DarkX would finish 117 way before this name change even occurs, making it more logical to keep the temporary UUS instead of TS, as the official name just wouldn't come into effect until a bit over a full year after this point in time. Anyways, due to these aforementioned factors, the building time for 117 would come to a grinding crawl, and DarkX's motivation to continue would plummet downwards once again, but he would keep on going, eventually finishing it after another 2 months, in June of 2015. All that was left now, the finale, Element 118 UUO. This was it, his final level to finish, and his hardest one yet, 118 UUO. He would make it monstrously difficult, combining every single gimmick of his previous levels into this one singular map. Around this time as well, DarkX would see how Cataclysm and Diablo X, former impossible levels, would be beaten, giving him additional motivation to finish it all off, as well as ramping up 118's difficulty, working on it during mid-July. This building phase would continue well into August 2015, with the release of 2.0, which introduced the dual game mode. DarkX would, of course, hastily include this into his final level, and therefore, after over a year of starting his Element Series 12, in the early weeks of September 2015, it would all be finished. Element 118 UUO would be completed and published onto the servers. And with this, he is done. DarkX is finished. He did what he set out to do, and now it's over. He vanishes into the background, no longer creating, no longer interacting with the community. However, he probably wouldn't leave entirely. He would stick around from time to time, keeping tabs on community events and generally watching as things unfold throughout the years. But for now, the story is over. After finishing his series, DarkX's levels would sit there, remaining completely untested in difficulty for all this time and mostly forgotten by the community. That is, until 4 years later. Whether through top players discovering his levels, or groups like Restoration Union, interest in his Element series would grow slowly again, causing a resurrection to them. Soon enough, some top players would try and beat some of these levels, beginning with Element 111 RG. However, seeing as it took until 2024 for someone to even beat RG, I doubt players 4 years before its official verification could have the skill to do so. Thus, these levels would quickly become infamous again, being seen as too difficult or downright impossible, especially for the later levels like 115 to 118. Their level of difficulty would simply be unimaginable, even 6 years after their initial creation. During this time, the rush to create top levels would really pick up, and DarkX's Element series would really stand out among the sea of endless top ones, garnering more and more attention for their infamous difficulty, unique gameplay styles, and gimmicks never seen in any level before and even after their time. Thus, many top ones either try to match up to the difficulty of the Element levels, but they simply can't, and even if they do, they lack the creativity and unique style that these levels have. Additionally, while all of this is happening, something remarkable happens: the verification of Element 111 RG. While it wouldn't have an insane impact on the wider community itself, It would mark the first completion of an Element Series 12 level in over 10 years. This would probably set off a chain reaction, leading to more players trying to complete the other element levels in the series, with 112CN, 113NH, and 114FL being verified within the span of 6 months. And as 2024 rolls into 2025, 115MC would follow suit, taking 8 months to beat. However, the community is making rapid progress, conquering level after level in DarkX's Series 12. What could possibly stop them now? Well, as it turns out, the sheer difficulty of Element 116LV is an absolute roadblock. Top players simply struggle to pass the dozens of unique timings, gimmicks, and progress just slows to a grim crawl. On top of this, the levels simply utilize game modes they quite frankly are not the best at, and when combined with the gimmicky nature of his Element series, this quickly turned into a brutal slog for everyone trying to complete the series. However, with enough time, 116 eventually falls after a rough verification period of 10 months, being placed either in the top 3 or even in the top spot. Wherever it places, it's going to be insanely difficult regardless. And renewed attention. Does DarkX even notice? Would he even care to return to the game after nearly a decade since he left? I think the answer is yes. It would be too illogical to assume he wouldn't when old creators and players like Roadbos and Zobros have already done so. Thus, he would probably keep a low profile, lurking around in the comments of videos about his levels, seeing what the community says about him, and eventually he would return. By late 2025, it would be likely that the Restoration Union would get into contact with DarkX, and they would begin to discuss his past and his history with the game, why he left, and other details. At this point, he would most likely share such, but he would still keep his overall mysterious nature and refrain from sharing any details about the remaining 2 element levels, 117UUS and 117UUO. He would be glad that he wasn't forgotten and that people cared about his levels enough to actually try and verify them, which was, after all, his goal from the very start. And as top players would try and beat 117UUS, DarkX would drop hints and clues about how to do a certain gimmick, timing, or just how to pass a specific part. Even after all this time, he would continue displaying his deep intellect about how game mechanics as well as unique timings work. Furthermore, he and the Restoration Union would make changes and fixes to all his element levels, as I'm sure throughout the game's updates, a lot of gimmicks and timings would no longer work as intended or outright make the level physically impossible. And as they would do this, top players would slowly work on chipping away at element 117, making small progress here and there. And as each month passes, they grow closer and closer to finally reaching the pinnacle, element 118UUO. Eventually, after more than 2 years of trying to verify element 117UUS, it would finally be conquered, and all that was left, the final one, 118. The thing is, however, considering the absolute insanity included in DarkX's final element level, what hope do players, even right now, have of even beating it? It took them 2 whole years and hundreds of thousands of attempts to clear 117. I'm not sure at this point they would have the will, let alone the skill to go from 117 to 118 immediately. Therefore, I think they would leave element 118UUO as another in the future type level, up there with others like Aternus and Angelicide. For DarkX, I'm sure this outcome is fine with him. He finished his series, having achieved his goal in this game, and now his levels sit as landmarks of difficulty in this game, having achieved the top spots time and time again. And a sizable portion of the community looks up to him, and he will now be largely liked instead of hated. And finally, his last and proudest creation, 118, is among the hardest ever in GD. He has done all he ever wanted to do in this game.